Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this special Autumn Water Cooler webinar. We are kicking off a quarterly series of informal yet insightful conversations designed to bring our community closer and celebrate the power of technology transfer and the incredible impact it has on our world. Today, and in the sessions to come, we will dive into the heart of what makes our work from innovation to impact so meaningful. The Better World project at the heart of Autumn's mission is all about showcasing those stories, the narratives where academic innovation leaps from the lab and transforms lives. The Better World project showcases diverse success stories from institutions worldwide, spanning healthcare, agriculture, and material science, from groundbreaking medical diagnostics and life-saving vaccines and drugs, to innovative agricultural tools and advanced materials. These narratives showcase the scientists and the crucial role of technology transfer professionals in bridging the gap between laboratory discovery and real-world application. Emphasizing the necessity of continued federal funding for basic research, the Better World project celebrates the transformative power of academic innovation and the dedicated individuals who champion its journey from concept to market. We'll be hearing first-hand accounts, exploring diverse perspectives, and sparking discussions on how we can collectively amplify the impact of technology transfer. This isn't just about celebrating past successes, though. We are here to foster a dynamic exchange of ideas. Think of this as your virtual water cooler, a space to connect, share challenges, and brainstorm solutions. We'll be covering a range of topics from navigating the evolving landscape of intellectual property to fostering inclusive innovation ecosystems. We're not just talking about patents and licenses. We are talking about real-world solutions to pressing challenges. Today, we are diving into a remarkable, compelling story from Penn State University. We'll hear how agricultural technology made its journey from initial discovery to commercial application, and most importantly, the positive difference it is making. Think of this water cooler as a relaxed, informal chat, a conversation. So please jump in with your questions and insights. We have with us today Matthew Smith from Penn State's Technology Transfer Office. Hello, Matthew.
Hi there, RK.
And Hunter Swisher, CEO of Phosphorus. Hello, Hunter.
Hey, everyone.
Hello. So they both will share their first-hand experiences. So let's get started and explore how innovation from Penn State is contributing to a better world. Matthew, let me start with you. So can you give us a brief overview of Penn State's research environment and how it fosters innovation, particularly in areas that align with industry needs, like those addressed by Phosphorus?
Well, RK, I thank you and the Autumn management for Hunter and I being able to be guests on Autumn's Better World Project's inaugural webinar. So thank you first. It appears that the university's senior management used AI to anticipate your question, or perhaps they were worried about my response to it, because they've prepared this document which basically says, why partner with Penn State Research? And it's a 7-reason answer to that question that you asked. We also have another document that recently came out that's entitled the 2024 Annual Report, Penn State Research. Penn State's a $1.3 billion research institution, and our statistics are readily available at these brochures, which would be found on the internet. From the standpoint of my office, we have basically received 232 inventions in 2024 from a wide range of departments and colleges. There were 5 other startups that occurred last year, along with 32 licenses and 35 issued patents. and that doesn't include the foreign rights. And our licensing income for 2024 was $4 million. Earlier historical data is available in the autumn reports, as you know. In terms of innovation and the commercialization of it, one of the key players was former Penn State president Eric Barron, who championed entrepreneurship when he arrived in 2014. Hunter actually knows him much, much better than I do. In any case, he supported a number of initiatives to address the challenges of commercializing academic research in Appalachia. He established the Invent Penn State initiative, which encompasses not only my office, the Office of Entrepreneurship and Commercialization, the Innovative Research Park, and entrepreneurship programs that Hunter took advantage of, including Launchbox and Tech Accelerator program. The current president, Neely Bendapudi, and the senior VP of research, Andrew Reed, continue to support Barron's objectives, and that includes increasing the staffing for the Office of Tech Transfer under the leadership of Bin Yan, who holds a PhD and a JD. Individual colleges have also established programs to de-risk their technologies and move it towards commercialization. In the case of Hunter, he benefited from the vision of Gary Thompson, the former research dean, who established the RAIN and MISC grants, which support de-risking. There are currently administrators within the college that include Maria Spencer, Dan Azera, and Mark Gagnon and Scott Welsh that play administrative roles in de-risking the technology and helping startup companies like Hunter's. And Hunter can talk about that on his own. And then further downstream, there's the PSU affiliated 1855 Capital and Ben Franklin program, which is part of the Commonwealth, as well as the Life Science Greenhouse. And these complement what the SBIR and STTR programs have. So I'll pass this over to Hunter if he wants to comment to that or elsewhere.
Yeah, just going on that, Hunter. So you are a student of Happy Valley. So tell us that story of how Phospholutions first became involved in this technology with Penn State. What sparked your initial interest?
Yeah, so hey everyone, my background's in plant sciences. I had the opportunity as an undergrad actually to study underneath Professor Dr. Jonathan Lynch in one of our capstone courses that I took a little early as a college grad or a college undergrad. I was really what piqued my interest was the potential impact for this technology. So, we were sitting in a classroom learning all about global phosphorus use, the second largest nutrient needed for food production. And it's quite alarming that we're running out of this resource pretty quickly, at least in geographies like North America. And it's quite a big impact from a sustainability perspective in terms of the detriment that it causes some of our waterways. And so when I was learning about the technology that we were actually using hands-on in the classroom, I kind of raised my hand and asked, why isn't this made it to market? And that really started my journey of piquing my interest into what if my career shifted from academia into potentially commercializing and licensing this technology to form a business. And so, yeah, it really started right there in the classroom.
Oh, fantastic. So back to Matthew. So can you give us a background on this technology from the university's perspective, and also elaborate on distilling what is the essence of a successful university industry partnership based on this experience with Phospholutions?
Okay, so the journey for Phospholutions licensing really began with Jonathan Lynch, who was a faculty member in the Department of Horticulture, and it predates the effective date of the license agreement, which was back in 2017. In fact, Jonathan, as a neophyte inventor, filed his first invention disclosure in 1992, which was assigned to me. I conducted a marketing effort for his technology, which was a solid implant fertilizer for woody plants. However, the marketplace was telling us that that was too labor intensive and that it wouldn't really be receptive. And so consequently, we did not file for patent protection. And undeterred, Jonathan filed the next year in 93 a invention disclosure covering new and unrelated research from his lab. I believe at the time, Hunter had not yet been born. I don't know if you can confirm that, Hunter, but were you born in 93?
94.
Yes. There's a sense of perspective in terms of what it takes to transfer a technology or basic research technology. In the case of this, his original work, the solid phase P buffer, ultimately got key assistance from my office's paralegal, Ruth Harpster, as well as the current associate director, Brad Swope, who was a former examiner who helped meet with, well, he met with Jonathan and I to go over a office action in which Jonathan's own prior art was being cited against him. And Brad, from his perspective as a former patent examiner, identified a key insight that allowed for us to overcome Jonathan's own prior art and to get the first issued patent. And sometime, I guess when Hunter was in elementary school, maybe a mile or two down the road, because he's a State College native, this horticultural faculty member disclosed 2 additional inventions in 1999 and also in 2023. And after authorizing provisional patent applications, we ultimately prosecuted the U.S. patent rights to issuance. And when Hunter actually licensed the technology, the license was to the second and third disclosure, as opposed to the first invention, because that patent had expired. And that's a really important point to emphasize, is that given the early stage nature of university academic research, it's often second, third generation IP that becomes critical from the standpoint of licensing and commercialization. And as I distinctly recall, and Hunter can confirm, I certainly coached this future Forbes 30 under 30 individual that he should also seek his own IP protection on behalf of his company, whether that's filing for patent rights or identifying trade secrets that could be useful in manufacturing and process and other barriers to entry. So I'll stop there and let
so before Hunter gives more response, I have a follow-up on this. So at the recent autumn annual meeting, there was a lot of discussion about how technology transfer professionals don't tell their stories of their involvement. You are the author of this Better World project write-up that Autumn looked at, and that's how we are showcasing this Penn State technology and Hunter Swisher in this webinar. So I want to congratulate you on putting technology transfer as a centerpiece. So thank you for that. And I just want to elaborate on what you said in the write-up about your marketing efforts. So I understood a lot about your patent protection efforts. Can you elaborate on your marketing efforts, what you did with this?
Yeah, so I mean, there were 3 inventions. So I, at the time, if my memory serves me correct, marketed all.
Matt, is it helpful if I take that for just a second? Just to
go ahead, please.
For a second. Please. I think one of the things I wanted to comment on, RK, was that, you know, with Matt and I, so I think if I can maybe paraphrase a little bit, Matt, you know, the university didn't necessarily see a direct path to market with the technology. And I think that the professor at the time, you know, wanted to potentially pursue it, kind of had his academic career, wanted to really stay focused on that, and wasn't really in the business of trying to spin out a company. From my point of view, these were patents that were sitting on the shelf. And there wasn't really a plan for commercialization. I came through as an undergrad and kind of rediscovered the opportunity, and I had an idea that I thought that was going to make this more viable. And that was an idea where the university stepped in, and I always like to say, you know, having the idea, having the invention is really just the first step. You've got the rest of the business to go build. And where I view the university spent a lot of time marketing was not actually to the industry, but rather to supporting an undergrad like myself or other grad students around the university on the resources necessary to support and de-risk taking a business opportunity on. And I think the challenge here as a university is, you know, especially with undergrads, you don't necessarily get their intellectual property, but they certainly can be vehicles to bring intellectual property to market. And so I think Penn State did a great job and I think continues to do a great job at supporting entrepreneurs. But then also I'd see a big shift in the industry with the new president on trying to engage with industry, bring industry there to tap into intellectual property as another outlet for licensing.
Great.
And I would just double down on what Hunter said. Hunter was instrumental in the development and commercialization of this technology. It was definitely clear Hunter grew to the challenge and without Hunter, this technology would have continued to be Rembrandts in the attic, in my opinion.
That's a fantastic insight, Matt. Hunter, following up on that, so you got this technology from Penn State. So can you tell us the story of what significant hurdles you encountered and how did you do the fundraising? It's an amazing fundraising story. Please elaborate on that.
Yeah, thank you. So when we took the technology out of the lab, what we were left with was essentially some core IP that covered very broadly the idea of using a category of chemistry to bind and release phosphate in a very controlled manner. And that's great. The reality is that there was no clear vision for what is the product, what's the market we want to go after, how are we going to formulate this, what's the cost of this, is it scalable, what's the business model to take this to market. There's all these things that kind of come next. And admittedly, it wasn't really in my head as an undergrad. It wasn't what I was being taught in plant sciences on all these different aspects, but I understood the technology really well. And so what we ended up doing in terms of barriers was first, like, what's the value proposition of this technology? I mean, again, these are very technical inventions. And on paper, it seems like there's something there, but what does it actually mean to, say, a farmer out in the real world? And what are we trying to position it as? And so some of the barriers were, we had an expensive material that was only available in very low quantities. There was no product, and it presented itself a unique application method to a farmer. They don't like dust, and applying a dusty material wasn't going to be satisfactory. There wasn't a business model on how we were going to bring this to market and be competitive against what ultimately is a very large commodity product, right? Phosphate fertilizer around the world. It's cheap and abundant, and that's why farmers are using it, and that's why there's a little incentive to shift to something more efficient. So we've had to go through this journey. I mean, we did things where we invested heavily in the material science research. We dropped our cost of goods by 98%. We opened up and unlocked millions of tons of availability of the supply. All of a sudden, now we can bring this to market. So then we had to invest in the field trials. And by the way, in agriculture, you get one shot a year to put something in the field. So the development timeline is extensive. And so we took the venture capital route, and we said we need to raise some capital to be able to de-risk this business and fund it. And we went all in and put all of our chips in on ag and said it's going to take us 5 years and $20 to $40 million to get there. And we've kind of crossed over that bridge and are now starting to see that commercial, I would say, ship take off. So.
And some of your strategic venture capitalists were people in the industry that really validated your vision.
That's correct. So to your fundraising point, RK, fundraising, what an art form that can be. I was fortunate to come out of the university in what I think at the time was kind of the ag tech boom. Capital raising kind of goes in cycles, just like other asset classes and markets. And there's a lot of money going into ag tech. We were, fortunate enough to have a pretty lean business model, and we spent our capital very efficiently. But raising capital, I will admit the one thing I've learned throughout my journey, both being with other peers and entrepreneurs that maybe have leveraged university technology, is that typically the original inventor, the technical person, is really good in that early days of development. They start to become no longer very relevant in the fundraising conversation when you get to the product market fit commercialization phase. That's when that expertise shifts a little bit. And I've been lucky that I've had all these resources around me to help kind of pick up all of those things, because I'm certainly technical by training. But yeah, it's a process of being told for every 100 conversations, 99 of them tell you no.
But I would also add, as someone who observed Hunter grow over the years, that he grew to the challenge in part because I really believe he's gifted in being able to share his vision and get people to support it. I look back on my notes in advance of this meeting, and I discovered, and Hunter will have to fill this in, but he went with a Penn State delegation to Three River Ventures before he ever made a pitch, and he got to see people do a pitch and just observe. And then when he had the chance, he participated in the first Invent Penn State conference, and you were one of several other student group startups, right, that got funded. And then you came back a year and a half later, and then didn't you sweep the awards and you walked away with 2 or 3 of the awards?
Yeah. So what we were very fortunate of, RK, is the very first money in, we raised almost $400,000 of non-dilutive, pure grants and pitch money, right? Business pitch competitions
Yeah.
like Matt's talking about. We also found some early family and friends. These are typically very early angel investors. They write small checks, they take high risk, and they hope that that really pays out in the long run. And as you kind of get through that phase, you move into the venture capital stage, and that's when you're getting pre-seed and seed rounds and moving through that equity piece. I think to Matt's point here, I think the university support at that stage is very different. And I think the mindset, my feedback to say all of you that are tech transfer experts here is the invention, that's not what sold the story. That's not what raised capital. It was not the core intellectual property. That's just one small component of that entire story. The idea is the intellectual property is a barrier to entry, just like Matt mentioned. It's something that, discloses the invention in more detail to an audience that, it may be relevant to, but it's not the story of the business. And I think that's a lot of times, I'm fortunate enough to be in an advisory board for the College of Ag at Penn State that focuses on entrepreneurship and innovation. And one of the number one things we talk about every quarter is just about how do we shift the mindset of these faculty members to think more about the application of the technology? How do we focus on bringing in industry to help us determine what the value of the intellectual property is? And what does an actual business look like? And how do you encourage a faculty member to take that risk to go start one?
And even should they, right? Yeah. Because sometimes it's a personality thing where the faculty member really is not the person that should be taking the risk on the entrepreneurship venture.
That's fascinating. I am learning so much between the dynamics between you two already, but specifically, Hunter, can you elaborate more on the dynamics of this partnership with Penn State? What was particularly effective from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I mean, I owe a lot of our early success to Penn State support in the sense that number one, I was 20 years old and I was set on a PhD path, and that in my mind was slightly less risky, and it was something that was a little bit more well known, right? There was a rule book, and there was a pretty well beaten path to walk down, and I had to get the courage to say, okay, I'm going to postpone that plan and leap out of college directly into a startup. And so, when I was 20, we raised the $400,000. We, took in some pre-seed money. We hired a couple employees who went out and started trialing stuff all over the country in terms of trials with customers, and started to formulate a product and set up supply. And then I graduated. And it was just like, I mean, I missed my graduation date because I was on the road trying to sell product. And I think that, for me, without having the backbone of accelerator programs, funding, the intellectual property and the license that went with it, the network. I think the network is very, Penn State's all known about our alumni association, but even just the network and staff that's been hired at the university to support entrepreneurs like myself. And every time we kept growing to that next stage of business, the university was following our journey, was kind of propping up this next resource that was going to be needed at that next step. So really, I think it encompasses almost everything. And to this point, even today, we still do research at the College of Ag. We still engage with the university. We've located our headquarters next to the university for that exact reason. We still have all of our R&D happening there in operations. When we think about Penn State and Phospholutions, I think it's a pretty gray area in between the two. They're not really separate in that sense. It's very much supporting each other.
That's great. Matt, you already mentioned a little bit about this, but you mentioned in the Better World Project summary that you mentored Hunter from his undergrad days. So what were the key challenges you helped him navigate, particularly the gap between academic research and entrepreneurial ambition? Because he mentioned he was set on his PhD during his undergrad.
Yes. Yeah. So I got a phone call from Jonathan Lynch saying he had a student undergrad that was interested in his technology and would I talk to him. And Hunter would probably know better than I, but my recollection is Hunter would show up periodically, sometimes unannounced, and ask me questions about whatever was on his mind, and then he would disappear. And I also provided or attempted to provide opportunities for Hunter. I think it may have been I who got him to go to the Pittsburgh Venture Fair, if my memory serves me correct. I think I made him aware of the Tech Accelerator program that was being offered. It was new, and also may have given him contacts that I may have had or came across my radar screen that I thought might be useful. I certainly was not his only mentor. In fact, one of the strengths of Hunter was he found a lot of different mentors in a lot of different places that cumulatively, I think, helped him move up the learning curve and become much more sophisticated.
That's fantastic. So Hunter, getting back to what Matt was saying, so tell us about your mentors. How did that help you?
Yeah, so look, what I was really good at was plant sciences, but there was not a time in my life where I took a business course. And so that was certainly something new for me. I think complexity of venture capital, I think going through kind of startup 101, thinking through licensing agreements, again, not something that was very privy to me. I was fortunate to kind of go through the Tech Accelerator program where at the time there was already kind of a pre-negotiated or templated version of a licensing agreement that allowed faculty members, is what it was intended for, to really easily bring technology to market. But I don't know. I think from my perspective, I like to learn new things, and so this has been quite a journey to do so. And again, it's more successful when you have a lot of folks in the university that provide a lot of value outside of just the classroom.
Fantastic. Matt, before I get to Hunter on specific questions about his company, I want to ask you a question that's very important for this audience and scientists. So for scientists, researchers, and tech transfer professionals looking to translate the discoveries into real-world impact, what do you recommend as an actionable step or steps they should take today, especially considering how successful this collaboration has been for Penn State and Phosphorus?
Well, I think the first thing, obviously, is to file for patent protection before you make an enabling public disclosure. Ideally, you want to publish in a high-profile academic journal within your field. The higher, the better. And while potentially a double-bladed sword, encourage third-party validation of your published research. This validation de-risks your technology in the eyes of potential licensees. In addition, third-party research may validate your technology as an area that you conceptually reduce to practice in the patented area or the patent written description, but don't have the time and the resources to do in your own lab. And while your subsequent research may decline in publication value, it certainly has greater commercial value. And this kind of summary may not have been particularly relevant for the Phosphorus technology, but I've certainly discovered that this is important for many of my other technologies. And I could go into more detail if we have the time to talk about, material scientists providing samples so that they could be used for, components or for some kind of value-added coating or something. In terms of biological materials, sharing the biological materials is helpful. There's a balancing act between properly executing material transfer agreements to transfer these materials and the speed of getting things done. And there's a certain amount of benefit in taking a certain amount of manageable risk that expedites the transfer and, allows for an acceleration of interest. And you have to focus on what you can control and what you can't. And sometimes I think there's value in letting go of downstream developments while focusing, especially if it's a materials invention, on your core materials. But of course, the devil's in the detail on how you do that. In the case of Jonathan Lynch's technology, I think the take-home message is you support your research, even if it takes several years and multiple years to get through patent prosecution. You keep your patent rights alive as long as financially prudent, and keep open to any opportunities that may appear, and you never know how things are going to evolve. And I think, this is one of the beauties that Hunter came on the scene, and he came at the right time with the initiative that Eric Barron brought, and managed the opportunities extremely well.
That's valuable insights. Thank you, Matt, for that. So Hunter, getting back to the company thing. So can you quantify the impact of this technology from Penn State, perhaps in terms of environmental benefits or lives improved?
Yeah. So, look, we've done some work in looking at the sustainability side. I just want to make a comment before I disclose those things. I think the key here is that for a product to be successful and to make an impact, especially worldwide, it's got to make sense for somebody economically. And we built this product with that in mind. Sustainability is kind of the heart of Phospholutions as a company. But you'll notice that we have a product name called RhizoSorb. And RhizoSorb is differentiated from our company brand because our company is really focused on the sustainability outcomes that are byproducts of better phosphate use efficiency. But on the flip side, RhizoSorb and what our farmers know is a product that saves them money on fertilizer costs by getting more out of it. And I say that because I think sustainability is something that, at least in my space, tends to be a lot of innovation in that area, but not a lot of meaningful, impactful applications that can be really commercially viable at scale. So in terms of our technology, look, we're doubling the efficiency of phosphate use on farm. And that's quite substantial because what that allows us to do is apply less to get the same or better yields in major row crops around the world. And a couple attributes that make this important here is one is water quality. So about 70% of our freshwater around the globe will experience some form of algae outbreak, which is devastating aquatic ecosystems. Our product's been proven in multiple third-party university studies to reduce runoff potential by about 78% compared to conventional phosphates. Secondly, phosphates have a carbon footprint, and it's an industry that's a mined material, and it's moving bulk products around the world. And that's not low in carbon. And there's very few ways to mitigate or offset carbon emissions associated with that other than reducing the overall volume. And so we're able to apply less per acre, and we're replacing higher carbon intensity inputs into the finished product with a lower carbon intensity product like ours. And so we've been able to show through a third-party life cycle analysis that we can reduce the GHG emissions associated with phosphate use by up to 45% compared to the conventional sources today. And then lastly, I would say resource utilization. So, there's constant back and forth on how much phosphate's really left in the world. What's key here to note is that in North America, we've got less than 50 years left. When we run out of phosphate domestically, as one of the major agricultural markets worldwide, this is the second largest nutrient needed for food production. And 70% of this resource is located just in the country of Morocco. So when we are out of it, we're relying on importing from Morocco, Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia are the four major players. And that presents a huge, I would say, food security threat for us and globally.
And didn't the war with Russia and Ukraine end up creating an opportunity for better awareness of your value proposition?
Yeah, supply chain disruptions as a whole can be quite impactful to food security, including fertilizer usage.
So, Hunter, elaborating on that and your answers previously, I want to understand your expansion into global markets, particularly New Zealand. So you guys have had some recent investments that's going to accelerate your commercial launch in just not only US crop market, but also globally. So can you elaborate on your global ambitions?
Yes. So I've always had a global view for the company. I think what that has meant for us is that's why it was so critical to continue building out intellectual property portfolio. So we've developed, I think, 13 patent families that we filed in 60 plus countries. It's been primarily to take a very aggressive approach to anywhere where phosphate's being mined, used, or applied. And so for us, why we think that we can move globally so quickly is because of our business model. So essentially, we tap into fertilizer manufacturers to make our product, and then we sell that through distribution. And that puzzle really works at a global scale. And so it's been quite easy to tap into. Today, we basically work from Canada down to Argentina in either some market development or commercial capacity today, and are expanding into Europe as well. But we really view that this is things going to keep continuing to build out over time as we grow.
That's great. So you touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask you with a quote from one of the people who funded your company, called Kazal of OAS, said, "Doing more with less." That's what exemplifies Phospholutions. So how does RhizoSorb embody this principle, this technology? How does Phospholutions ensure its technology contributes to a more sustainable future for farming?
Yeah. So look, phosphate fertilizer, although it's the second largest nutrient needed for food production, as little as 10% of what's applied to the farm field in the year of application is actually used by the plant. It's substantial to think about this. This is, 10% of the input dollars into growing corn is phosphate fertilizer. That's a lot of money just being wasted. And it certainly does no good when it lands in our environment and causes even more expensive problems downstream. And so for us, doing more with less just means getting better use out of what we apply. And so there's a whole lot of money and other solutions being focused on trying to prevent it from coming off the farm fields, or once it comes off the farm field, not causing the issues. We're focused on trying to not put so much on the farm field, but still get the same outcome, not compromise productivity from a yield perspective or food production perspective. And ultimately, the big value proposition to a grower is if we do more with less, we save money. And farmers, especially in today's climate, high phosphate prices, low commodity prices, tariffs being put in place every other day. This is a pretty volatile market, and farmers are looking at ways to get a competitive edge to make sure that they're going to be able to keep the lights on next year.
That's fantastic. So, Hunter, what's the future potential of this technology? Where do you see Phospholutions going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think for us, look, we've taken in venture capital. There certainly comes expectations when you raise that type of capital. It's a different mindset than say building a lifestyle business. And I actually wanted to kind of plug back to Matt's comments earlier on some of the advice to you all on what's a successful actionable step that you can take out of this. I think, Matt, you hit it earlier, having that very frank discussion with the inventor about what is their plans for the future. Are they looking to stay in academia? Are they looking to build a lifestyle business? Or are they looking to build a global impact? Those are three very different paths to take. And without the right champion behind this thing, you can have the best IP in the world. You can file it and spend all the money you want on it, but it's not going to go anywhere. And so I think for us, we see this thing as going global. And as far as I'm concerned today, we have a vision of growing this thing over the next 5 to 10 years.
That's good luck to Phospholutions, Hunter. So that concludes my questions, basically, but I want to conclude this with some question, one to Matt first, and then to you, Hunter. So Matt, you were the one who brought this compelling story to Autumn. So what advice would you give to technology transfer offices looking to highlight and share the success stories, particularly those that demonstrate significant societal impact, like this particular story, to inspire and inform the broader community? Because this is something I'm co-chair of the Better World Project Committee. And we've been looking for 80, 90 stories every year. And last year, we got only 30 stories from all over the world. So we need stories. So people like you need to inspire. So tell us, what do you see?
Well, I'm surprised at the number. I wasn't aware of that. But first, let me say it's a great blessing to work with pioneering academic researchers and to see the finished product of their intensive labor after years of painstaking research. It's challenge in the sense that you have to educate them on how the patent game is played. You have to tell them you need to not tell them how to do their research, but you need to give them feedback from the marketplace on what they need to do to de-risk their technology. And if you get the right coachable inventors, they can take a tier 3 level technology and further de-risk it and bring it up the technology readiness level to 4, 5, 6, and get it into a condition that maybe an established company will take in, or make it more investable for an entrepreneur like Hunter. And then you have to be flexible in exploring licensing interest, and you have to strike a deal that's reasonable, that works for both parties, and you've got to support your licensee, yet ensure that the upside is shared back to the university and its stakeholders. If you have success occur after all that time and effort, you can wait around for senior management to recognize your accomplishments before you move on to another job, or if you have the patience to wait until the retirement or death, which was getting the case with me. And so I decided to jump and start writing these proposals. And as you know, success has many parents, and you need to do your own advertisement of your successes, but it's not my success. I want to make that absolutely clear. There are many, many different people that contributed, and absolutely, in my opinion, for the commercialization of this technology that arose from Jonathan Lynch's Penn State lab, Hunter is the one that deserves all the accolades, and so but there are key individuals that throughout come in and out and help things along, and so I think from the standpoint of recognizing that university senior management has a lot of different priorities and they may not be aware of what's happening in the trenches, it often is on your own responsibility to take the initiative and to write these things up, because if your senior management has too many priorities and they're pressing and competing, where are they going to get the limited bandwidth to do it? And so at the end of the day, if you want your inventor, your office, your university, your licensee to get recognized, you got to take the time and effort and just do it yourself.
Oh, that's great. So, funny question I have is, to your Penn State rivals, the Big Ten rivals, universities, what do you tell those tech transfer offices? Get those stories ready so that
I don't have much time to talk to my colleagues in my office, let alone my rivals at another university.
But this forum, use this forum to tell them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's challenges in doing tech transfer, and the successes take time and effort, and I think you need to do that. I think nothing kills a technology, an academic technology, like a break in management. Losing a licensing officer and not replacing them for a period of time is really challenging for the technology to survive during that period. And I've been in one tech transfer office for over 33 years as a professional, and I was an amateur tech transfer person as an intern for a year. And so that continuity is one of the reasons why I'm here today with Hunter, because I've had that continuity, and it's shown in my comments and recognition of Hunter's amazing ability, as well as Jonathan's great science. But it also applies to other technologies where I've got established decade-long relationships. And sometimes it takes, 10, 20, 30 years for something to mature and thrive. And I think, that's something that may not be appreciated and certainly lost when people jump around and just play hired gun.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. So, Hunter, building on Matt's point, from a startup's perspective, what key elements should universities focus when fostering these partnerships to ensure maximal mutual success and also real-world impact?
Yeah, I think partnership is the key word there. And I say that because, look, in the end of the day, everyone's fighting for their own interests, but the main core interest that brings us together and why Matt and I are, still to this day connected is there's mutual interest in this. And I think that either side can get too greedy and that can cause problems. And, I've been fortunate to be on the side of asking Penn State for favors, and I've been fortunate enough to be supported in multiple ways, just not even tech transfer. But tech transfers work with me and things. I'll give you a highlight of a story that I think was impactful. And I know, Matt, it took you a little while for us to work together and find a way to get around this. But when we were taking in investment, there was some things in our licensing agreement that were hanging up investors. And that was tricky because it was make or breaking the ability to raise our first $1.5 million in seed investment. And without their willingness to change a term in that agreement, we might not be here today.
Amazing.
And so that flexibility and partnership is, there's a long-term view for this, and there's short-term needs and there's long-term needs, and how we manage that together as a university startup relationship is critical. And, we're very thankful for the flexibility they've provided. And, I think we're paying that back in dividends and royalties and others.
Yeah.
And I would just add to that, that flexibility that Hunter was talking about, he's accurate. I was on a different side of the table, and the director at the time, Harl Tolbert, and the associate person, Tim Hurley, uh, were more accommodating to that argued and got the accommodation that Hunter needed and allowed him to proceed with the $1.5 million round of financing that came in. And also, I'd add that Hunter, correct me if I'm wrong, but Harl had to work through the winter break to get that paperwork done so that you could proceed, right?
Yeah, RK, that's another critical piece here is that there's two different paces we're talking about. And unfortunately, those two things have to find ways to meet in the middle. So as a startup, there's one thing we like to do, and it's move very, very fast. And there's one thing the university is not particularly good at the size of Penn State, and it's moving very quickly. And so being able to break down that bureaucracy internally to support a startup and knowing when to do that is critical. And I think the other maybe last piece I'd say is, figure out how to back your winners. Um, Penn State has continued to lean in all the way from the top throughout presidencies now at this point. And that's been very, very impactful. And, I would get creative. There's some universities we've seen out there, which, Penn State hasn't done to date directly, but, they've invested into a venture capital fund that the university is a limited partner in. I've seen other universities spin out their own corporate, or not corporate, but their university venture arms.
Sure.
And that type of early seed funding is so, so critical. If you want to cater to startups, they need capital. Getting the patent together is only the first step.
Definitely, yeah. So that's a fascinating story from Matt and Hunter. So thank you very much for this enlightening conversation. I would like to open this for other people to ask any questions to Matt, Hunter, or me. So please go ahead. You can do the chat, or you can ask directly. I'll try to unmute when you put your hand up. So yeah, so this has been a wonderful start to the water cooler series. So yeah, I learned a lot, Matt, from initial story itself. Like that was quite fascinating how you wrote the Better World project summary for this partnership between Penn State and Phospholution. So yeah, congratulations on that. And Hunter, it was great to hear the origin story and also the sustained excellence that Phospholutions is going through. And good luck to your efforts in the next 5 to 10 years. And great. So if there is no more questions from the audience, yeah, I hope the audience learned something as well. The target was tech transfer professionals, but also scientists and other entrepreneurs as well. So hopefully they learned some things from the fascinating partnership between Phospholutions and Penn State University. So thank you. And thank you, Megan, for all your help in getting this off the ground. And our next one, oh, there's a question. Can you talk a little bit about assembling a team and how hard or easy was it, Hunter?
Yeah, what an important piece. So look, in early stage capital raising, they're looking for 2 to 3 things. They first are betting on the team. 2, they're betting on the vision. And 3, they're betting on the technology. And pretty much in that prioritized order, in my personal view. Similar to Matt, your reference on the technology side on tech transfer, the difference between you can take a B team with an A technology and you're going to usually fail. You can take an A team with a B technology and usually that team can figure out how to survive and make something meaningful. And I think that team is something that, from my experience, early stage investors, that's the number one thing they're looking for. So with that, in terms of building my team, it's gone through phases. So when I originally started this, it was kind of a one-man show. I had the opportunity to bring in our first employee who kind of felt more like a co-founder than really an employee at that stage. And we spent a lot of time together. And about 4 years into it, the business and the partnership kind of grew in different directions, and we parted ways, but started hiring our first executives. And I've hired some folks that worked out well. I've hired some folks that haven't. We've been able to be very successful in attracting, I would say, senior talent, folks that had been at big corporations, been executive in the C-suite, have been on boards, and that type of experience as a first-time founder, especially as young as I was just critical to both growing myself personally, but also building the confidence in our partners and investors that we were going to really be able to take this thing off the ground in partnership as a management team. To this day, management team's obviously very critical, and it continues to be, but it's always a work in progress. We expand our team every year, and usually a good sign of good growth.
So what are all some programs like iCore or anything else that were helpful in shaping Phospholutions?
Yeah, so I think what was unique about us is that we were able to license some of the foundational patents right off the bat. So I picked it up at that point. I didn't have to go through some of the development work where you're getting the grant funding and other things to support the development of the technology. And so that was enough of a foundation to take in venture capital and use equity dollars to build that instead, which again, we love grants because grants aren't dilutive typically. But we needed a type of capital and a pace behind it that was maybe a little bit faster than the development curve typically is. So at that stage for me, again, one, first-time founder. So it was a lot about trying to understand starting a business from scratch. And two, going through the process of finding that product market fit. And that's really that customer discovery stage. It's cold calling people. It's going out in the market and kind of showing your technology in its raw format to people and letting them give you feedback that helps you kind of iterate and improve real time. And as I was going through that phase, it was finding mentors, was finding accelerator programs. It was finding kind of free capital to help fund and secure that. It was finding people. Really, people was so critical. Not a lot of people want to join a startup that's got $1 million in the bank and 12 months of runway. That's a scary thing for a lot of people. And so you have to find the right DNA and build the right culture and take a lot of risk, to be quite honest.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for the questions, Ashley. So yeah, so thank you, Shamla, for the comment. Yeah, so thank you again, Matt and Hunter. And thanks, Megan, for this. So the next one will be in June because this started supposed to be March, but we ran into April. So it will be a quarterly series. The next one will be in June. Hopefully, a lot of you will join us for the next water cooler series on another fantastic Better World project. Somebody like Matt has written another story, and hopefully we'll feature that person and the people like Hunter who were part of the solutions part of this. So fantastic. Thanks for joining us on this virtual water cooler, and thank you.